Good morning. I'm Bishop Ron Shelton. Welcome to the interview of Bishop John Plummer. He's with us this morning. We're going to be talking about his book, The Many Paths of the Independent Sacramental Movement. Bishop Plummer, it's good to have you with us.
Always good to be here, Ron.
If you could tell us what brought you to write the book, and then we'll go from there with a couple other questions.
It's been many years. I think the book was published in 2005, and it was actually finished maybe a year or so before. I had taken 7 years off from graduate school. I had sort of taken a year of voluntary service work and then forgot to go back to school. And in the first phase of graduate school, I had been writing a dissertation on 12th century monastic theology, which was kind of stuck. And when I went back, my advisor said, well, you seem like you weren't getting a lot of traction with what you were trying to do here. Maybe you should actually be writing about something that you care more about. And I said, well, I had been advised not to write about something that I was like deeply personally invested in. He said, no, I think if you're going to finish, we've got to get you onto a topic that you're engaged enough about, that even with being busy and working and whatever, that you will have the energy to do. He said, why don't you write about the world of independent churches, since that's something you've been involved in and obviously care about? And said, you would let me do that? And they said, yes. And so I did, and I had fun doing it. It was a good excuse to visit people and talk to people and read things, and I thought that was the end of that. And like maybe 1 or 2 friends might read it, but that would be the end. So then I was at a dinner party that was hosted by a friend who was a liberal Catholic Church international priest. I actually don't know where he is today. And there was a fellow there from Texas who asked me what I was doing in grad school. I told him, and he said, oh, well, I would like to publish that if you would let me. And I said, really? Okay. And I did, and unfortunately his little operation fell apart fairly quickly after the book came out, but then John Mabry in California picked it up. So I never tried to get it published. I never intended for that to happen. It just unfolded that way. So,
How many years went in overall? How many years and possibly how many interviews did you conduct? And
it was about 2 years of work, from about 2002, 2003 to 2004, 2005, somewhere in there. But it reflects, I mean, I first encountered all of this in the mid-1980s, and obviously had accumulated experience, contacts, resources, etc. from that point forward. So all of that time is somewhat reflected in the book. And but it's such a fast-moving world that now I look at it and I cringe at times because, you know, things have changed or I've learned more about something. It's 10, 12 years have made difference in how things have moved.
I'd like to encourage you, and I'm sure our listeners will too, that within not too many more years that you try to update it and probably put in the things that you wish you had included then or wish you'd known then. But so we want to encourage you in that direction.
Well, we'll see.
I know it's like twisting your arm, and I would do it if it would work. I surely would.
You can write your own supplement.
Looking at the book and talking about the breadth of the Independent Sacramental Movement, you can go so far left that you can't even see the horizon. And at the same time, you can go as far right and not even see the horizon within the Independent Sacramental Movement. Looking at the movement as a whole, what would you say, or what do you believe are the positive aspects of the movement, or within the movement, as well as the negative aspects within the movement?
Well, from the positive side, I think, first of all, it's impossible to say anything that washes across everything. There are always exceptions. But speaking generally, it's a flexible, portable form of sacramentally oriented Christianity that works well in the present moment, when a lot of mainstream religion is kind of collapsing around the edges and it becomes harder for people to maintain properties, salaried clergy, big physical plants. These things are less possible for many congregations than they once were, and this way really provides a way for people to have a full sacramental life, an active church participation, a lively faith that can free itself of those things to the degree that a particular community can handle. I mean, you all are lucky to have a physical space. Some people don't. It works either way. You can make it work in the living room if you need to. And a model of clergy life that is serious but also appropriate to people that aren't being paid to do this, or may only, make very small amounts of money and have to make a living another way. All of that to me is very positive and very promising, and in a space where Christianity is increasingly culturally disestablished, very useful. The negatives, of course, would be you do find people who get into this for sort of ego-based reasons. They want to be the patriarch of everyone, including their 6 best friends and their dog. They have 15 miters that they want to show you, but no one that they actually have any personal connection to. I mean, you can find and that's what's always mocked when people sort of open the lid on this. That's often what they see is those sort of egregious examples, which I think are maybe more rare than often accused, but you can find that, and or people who have used the movement to spiritually isolate themselves from accountability and relationship with others. And while many of us are part of small communities or small jurisdictions, I think it is very important for people to build friendships and connections that go more broadly, because just being in a relationship with others brings with it a natural level of accountability. If my friends know what I'm doing, and we have an ongoing conversation about it, it's a lot less likely that I'm going to go off the rails or kind of get crazy, or just stop doing anything, which sometimes happens as well. And that encourages just people. If you're going to pursue a path like this as your way of being church, as your way of being Christian, when there aren't the structures that are imposed on, say, a modern Roman Catholic priest or a church of whatever church priest, then the cultivation of an active spiritual life has to become a more conscious choice. Somebody's not necessarily standing over you saying, you will say Mass every day, you will do the breviary, you will go on this retreat, you will do those things have to become self-chosen and worked with. And some people respond well to that and say, well, part of this is I am just going to take ownership of this. I'm going to listen to my friends and connections. I'm going to listen to the tradition. I'm going to do what I need to do to be a clergy person in this way, and other people don't. So, does that make some sense?
It does make sense. Since this is going to be viewed by a lot of different people from within the Independent Sacramental Movement, possibly, would you recommend that each individual, let's say jurisdiction, or each group attempt to put their history together to keep what made them do or why they are what they are for future reference or for future use of their group outside of their lifespan? Do you think that's a
I do think so, and I think since you mentioned the book, one of the challenges I had in research was getting primary source material, because when you're dealing with small groups of people and kind of not very institutionalized settings, things wind up in boxes in people's basements, and they wind up being thrown out, and they wind up, just who knows what happened to this or that, and which is unfortunate, and the history is important. we can learn a lot from what people did, whether it was good or bad, and sometimes find real inspiration in something that people have tried in the past, and maybe it didn't work so well for them, but maybe now is more the moment. I continue to find a lot of inspiration in what some of our forebears have done, and I'm very heartened that, for instance, the University of California, Santa Barbara has a large archive of material related to independent sacramental churches, old Catholic churches, etc., and has expressed an interest in allowing that to continue to grow and taking in material that people want to see preserved but don't have a place to put it. Emory has some, but they seem less open to that, at least at this moment. But so there are places where if you're thinking, well, I don't have anywhere to put this, and this is all fragile paper, and it's going to go into my attic, there are places that one can entrust this material for future use. And then there are people like Alexis Tansbach, who lives in London and is a graduate student at Durham University in the UK, is working on a PhD thesis on Bilot, who one of our spiritual ancestors, and through modern electronic resources like newspaper archives and things that have become accessible, he's found incredible primary source material that no one had really seen or known existed, that really fleshes out the story, and it will become a valuable resource. And so I think both in terms of preserving what we hold within our communities and taking advantage of what's now become available to us in an internet age of saying, well, I wonder what might have been in the paper about this. I wonder if there are any electronic archives that might have more about that. We can begin to tell our own story more completely in both its encouraging and its humorously dismaying aspects at times.
If you had to pick one of these forefathers or one of these that we have descended from, who would that be, just off the top of your head, and what would draw you to them, and what can we learn from them?
Oh, I don't know. It's so difficult to choose among them. I'm quite fond of Timaeus Ophiuch, who was a Syrian, ethnically Syrian Russian Orthodox missionary to the U.S. And when the Russian Church, under pressure, sort of withdrew its blessing from his mission, he said, "Well, never mind. I'm just going ahead." And I think that that's often our spirit, is that just because somebody says, it's like, no, we're not abandoning this. We're moving forward. Or even if you go further back to sort of the origins of Dutch Old Catholicism, which lies behind a lot of this, it was a similar spirit of, well, Rome is pulling a power play and won't consecrate a bishop, and the children haven't been confirmed, and we're kind of living in this interim space, and but fine, we're just going forward. And I think with people like Ophiuch, or like the origins of the Dutch Old Catholicism, you get, it's not, I don't think it's productive for us to be engaged in continuous conflict, not necessarily outer conflict, just conflict in our own minds with the larger churches, of measuring everything against them, of squabbling, we're different from them in this way, and we're different from them in that way, and we're not like this, or we're not like that, or we are like this, and we are like that, or they should think we're real, or they do think we're real, which is almost always false, and like everything is measured pro or con against pick your place, the Anglican Communion, the Roman Catholic Church, the Orthodox churches, whatever. Instead, it's just a spirit of, we're just going forward. We're just going to lead a sacramental life. We're just going to do this. And we're not engaged in a pro-con game of comparison. They can think what they want. They can do what they want. We hope they love us as brothers and sisters, but if they don't, that's their choice. And we simply will put one foot in front of another.
Bishop Robert Jones out in California made a statement in his book. talking about consecrations of bishops. Basically, I'll paraphrase it is, don't worry what they think about you. Do what you're called to do and do it as best as you can for your group. And I think that's true looking overall at the Independent Sacramental Movement, is find your place where God has placed you, God has called you as you've put forward, and be the best that you can be and reach across the aisle to other groups and build relationships, and that's what's important.
I think that's right. I've known Rob for many years, and he is a good soul. And it is finding what you're where you are actually called to be, and what your calling really is, not what your fantasy of your calling is. I think I think this will mostly be viewed by people who are inside of our world, and so speaking truthfully to ourselves, not so much advertising to others. I do think that at times we can get into a problem of having fantasies of what our church life is or our ministry is supposed to be like, often that relate to pictures that we have of church in our minds from wherever we came from before, or wherever we have kind of aspired to be, like whether a church always looked like this when I was growing up, or I always wanted to be in a community like this. Well, that doesn't really matter. Where are you right now? And the now deceased old Baptist radical Will Campbell, who lived outside of Nashville, ministers, and this is mainly mainstream people, would go to see him and say, "Oh, I'm seeking my ministry," and he would say, "Your ministry is always right under your nose. Look at where you are. Where you actually are is where your ministry is, and then that will unfold further as you go." And I think that's the task for us, or for anyone, whether one is essentially a hermit priest, kind of quietly celebrating the sacraments for the world within their own home, or whether you're a pastor of a community with a public face, or something else altogether. It's looking hard at where you are and saying, how is God calling me within these circumstances? If we believe, and I know you've heard this rant from me before, if we believe that we are the church, that we are a real expression of the body of Jesus Christ, then that means that the Holy Spirit is active in us. Not in some sort of like, if we were only like this, then the Spirit would be active. Or if we could only get to that point, the Spirit would be active. But no, the Spirit is active in our settings as we are. And our task is to simply look hard at that with an open mind and an open heart, and to see where that is. Obviously there will be human distortion and problems and issues because we are people, and that's just how it goes. But where in this is the Spirit active, and how can I kind of catch that wind and move with that?
As I was listening to you talking, something popped in my mind. I always tell our group that those that win the wars write the history, but also, no matter what the subject matter is, we come to it with our own bent, our own understanding, our own concept of whatever we believe that is. And so, therefore, whatever the history may be or the story may be, we will take that story and make it fit within our own understanding of what we believe it ought to be. And I think that is that's a human frailty, but at the same time, I believe it's what makes us uniquely different, each individual, each group within the Independent Sacramental Movement. So.
Oh, I agree, Ron. I actually think of it more like there are many, our history is enormously varied. Methodist, circuit riders, Russian Orthodox, missionaries, strange, people from wherever, and it all kind of becomes like threads woven together into a tapestry, or even just a rope or something, and each group, I think, sort of picks out one thread or two threads that relate to their situation and that they find particularly personally inspiring, kind of their patron, as it were. And the parish where I serve in Nashville descends very directly from the work of Ophiuch, and Ophiuch's story, if you ask people there to tell the story, they tend to tell Ophiuch's story. And even though it descends also from a lot of this other stuff as well, but that community tells that particular story as kind of the primary thread. This community would tell a different story as the primary thread. And but it is, I think, a gift of our world that our heritage is so varied that there can be that, that different communities with different settings can sort of choose the line of the story that meets their condition.
I was thinking, as you were saying about the threads, when I was stationed in England in the Air Force, I went to one of those huge castles, magnificent, thousands of rooms, and they had all these beautiful tapestries. And I was, as you said, I was thinking of the Independent Sacramental Movement as a huge, gigantic tapestry hanging on the wall. And one in particular, this one castle stuck out in my mind because it had its flaws. For instance, one of the knights' head was turned around backwards as he's riding in the scene. And then the horses all had dog paws instead of horse hooves. So within the Independent Sacramental Movement, I was thinking we are a tapestry. And as you was talking about individual threads, all of them make us who we are, what we are. And we can't, sometimes we are embarrassed by sometimes the things we even do, but the things other groups do. But at the same time, looking at the whole picture, it is a very beautiful, unique tapestry. And we need to focus on the positives and try our best to make sure we improve the negatives, or I would say make sure we don't cause more negatives. Thinking about the book, going back to the book, and I want to continually to recommend the book, even though it's 10, 12 years out of printing, or since you originally wrote it. What would you say is a surprise, or what really sticks out from the book to you that speaks or spoke to you at the time you were putting it together, that you said, I'd have never thought of that, or man, that's something that really needs to be told? What would you think? And I'll put you on the spot, I know.
Yeah,
I'm good at that, and you know I am. So.
I honestly don't know quite how to answer that. I think just to me the most striking thing in writing the book was probably becoming more acquainted with the immense diversity that exists, because I had kind of been in my own little pocket, like we all tend to be, with people that were of a relatively like mind, and then to get to spend time with people that were like way over on
one side or the other.
One side or the other, or a side I never knew existed. Like, really, this too, was somewhat enlightening, and realizing that they too may have a piece of the picture that is of value to everyone. I think that in term, maybe sort of beyond the book in a way, if I were to say, as I look around the movement, or as I travel around and get to spend time with people, which I've just done and I'm about to do again, the things that I see happening in the present moment are, one, people coming to more of an understanding of this, whatever they want to call this, the independent movement, independent sacramentalism. Some people prefer older words like old Catholicism, whatever you want to call this, locally governed Orthodox churches, I don't care. Coming to this as more of their conscious ecclesial identity, as opposed to saying, well, we're Catholics, we're just a little bit weird, or we're Orthodox, or we're Anglicans, or whatever, but to begin to say, no, this, whatever I want to call this, whether you like the ISM term or not, that this kind of wacky family is my church identity, and forming more of a sense of a whole that one is part of. And then I think closely related to that, what seems to be going on is then a question of how do we understand ourselves as church? If we are a way of being church, not necessarily any better or worse than other ways that the church exists, but a way of being the Church of Jesus Christ, then how do we understand that? How do we describe church in our setting with the reality of the way that things are?
That's true. if, in closing, let me ask you one other question. If you had a young man or a young lady before you
Yes.
who was looking into the Independent Sacramental Movement, or was even a part already of the Independent Sacramental Movement, what would be the words of encouragement, or just what would you say to them to help them not to go through maybe the pitfalls that others have, or
There's
to
no
help-
avoiding.
There's no avoiding them, I know. We all have them and we make them daily, but what would you say to them that are really, they're hungry for ministry in their way of reaching, and they're either part of the movement or looking into the movement? What would be just kind of some summation of what you would say to them?
Advice.
Yes.
I would, first of all, I would say that if they aren't if they have only had internet or correspondence contact, if they haven't actually spent time with people, that the most important thing of really understanding how things are and what things are and where one might fit is to find real flesh and blood, live, in-person occasions to spend time with people, to visit communities, to find a community that sort of fits you, and even if it's far away, make the effort to visit, make the effort to build a relationship, because real life community and real life friendships with other people who are part of this already will cut through the fantasy quickly, and will also help you understand in a way that no written treatment and no website would ever do. My other piece of advice to a sort of a new person would be that whatever you think this is going to mean, it will probably be radically different from what you imagine it will look like. Especially if one is pursuing a path of ministry. What you imagine that your priesthood is going to look like, is that never happened. I mean, it's always winds up just being different, and to remain open to the idea that you can that in offering yourself to serve, you're not setting the terms of what that service is going to look like, and the Spirit will do what the Spirit will do, and your job is to simply respond.
Well, Bishop Plummer, I do appreciate you taking time, and I know you'll be heading out down the road, down 40, heading home. We will be having Bishop Plummer back to do, and he has already done a lot of, I'll call them teachings through the David C. Galbraith lecture series, and he's been a very important friend of our local group as well as me as a bishop. And sometimes he's had to shake me and say, "What are you thinking?" And so
likewise. So
it's a two-way thing. So I appreciate your friendship. I appreciate your honesty. I appreciate many times being able to contact you and just say, "Here's what's happening," and you've been a great help. So I look forward to having you do some future teachings for the David C. Galbraith lecture series. Thank you for listening today, and have a good day.